What's up, skeptics? It's your boy Young Contrarian for AFK TV, and you're listening to the Young Contrarian Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. How's it going, y'all? I hope you're having a good one. Today we're going to do a Sunday secular sermon. Yeah, it's back, guys. It's been a little while, broadcasting delayed and all that, but look, I'm just trying to keep it real with you and keep the fellowship rolling. And also, I got some stuff I need to get off my chest. So here we are. Today we're going to talk about having religious parents as an atheist, and also about pride. Not in the biblical sense, but like when your parents are proud of you or you're proud of something you did. Pride is powerful. To feel that your parents are proud of you is usually near the top of emotional desires for a child. I can distinctly remember two instances. One, I felt pride from them, and the other, proud because they took my advice. First was when I was young, maybe 13. We had been what I would call lukewarm Christians for a while, searching for a new church again, and when we found one, the pastor there asked if I was saved and baptized. I had apparently forgotten that I had been saved as a young child, so I said no to both. And when my parents and the pastor sat in the living room with me, I felt pride. My parents were proud that I was following in their footsteps and becoming a faithful member of the religion, or whatever. As the pastor put his hand on my shoulder and we closed our eyes to say the acceptance prayer, I felt a rush of energy swell within me. It felt as if the Holy Spirit had filled me head to toe, and I was a new, more righteous person, and that's how I described it for a while. That was my testimony and my proof that God was real. I felt the Holy Spirit. For the following 5 years or so, I rarely questioned religion, but also it was mostly on the back burner. I never fully drank the Flavor Aid or made a conscious attempt to be pious or church-going. And by the time I reached college, I met people who believed differently to me, and I started learning facts about history and the cosmos that effortlessly turned my lukewarm Christianity into agnosticism. I don't know. And then, staunchly atheist, I feel like I know now. By the time I was maybe 20, I started to realize that feeling of the Holy Spirit during my experience of being saved by Jesus was really just a rush of endorphins for sensing my parents' pride in me. A sudden adrenaline rush, or maybe just a slight breeze or change in temperature in the room, or maybe the way the elderly pastor was strangely petting me like a dog that made my spiritual tail wag. But I think it's more likely that sensing my parents watching as I affirmed my belief as we prayed was the real sense of pride and rush of energy that I felt. As I grew stronger in my convictions and more knowledgeable about my claims, I decided to try and come out as an atheist to my parents. They were not amused. I think this was worse than if I had come out as gay. One specific effect my outing had was my mother admitting to crying every night for months because I would not be there in heaven with her when I die. This had a profound negative effect on me psychologically ever since. Somehow it made me realize that her fictional afterlife meant more to her than our time left together in reality on Earth. My feeling that my parents were proud of me completely vanished when I told them I'm atheist. I recently watched a video by the channel Nuance Ho called Questioning Mormon Learns Real Church History with John Dehlin and Kara Burrell. The hosts are two ex-Mormons, and their guest is the host Kara's friend named Eve. She's kind of in that limbo state between faith and doubt, and here's one of the first things she had to say. I hope they don't mind me sharing, as this really hit home and reflects exactly how I feel.
I don't know, you get to this point, oh gosh, what the heck? It's so hard to even consider if things might not be true, because all of a sudden, your whole concept and framework of like eternity and everything that you thought you knew, you question it, and you think, well, what is my family going to think? Is my family going to stay with me? Am I more important to my family than the church is?
It's a powerful question. Am I more important to my family than the church is? Hearing her story and opening up like that really hit home for me. That feeling that the church is more important than you. That feeling that if you can't agree, you can't belong. Faith over facts. At this point in my life, I worry that if I can't convince my parents of the truth, we will never get along. I guess that's incredibly selfish. Should I even try to deconvert them, or is that itself over the line? They indoctrinated me my whole childhood. Can't I try to convince them out in their twilight? Is it wrong to want to connect with my parents and, harsh as it may be, attempt to convince them? Here's Ricky from Internet Today sharing another heartbreaking sentiment.
It was like a Substack or something that I was reading about how someone, upon their MAGA parents passing away, came to realize they had left them nothing but Trumpy bears, My Pillows, and a TV with the Fox News logo burned into the corner.
Yeah, just a bunch of fucking kitschy bullshit.
Literally rotted their brain their final years and died the person that they don't even remember growing up with.
Yeah.
And it's really like heartbreaking.
That's another clip that pretty much just made me depressed, as I realized that's practically my parents. I feel like we used to be close when I was young, but as I came to my own view of the world, we grew apart. I'll take my blame for being such a militant atheist, but it feels like it takes two to tango, you know? The other instance of pride was when I felt proud that my parents actually listened to me for once in my life. They were seeking a new state to live in because the progressive California vibe was too woke for them or something, so I suggested try Tennessee. I'd been there before. It's central to a lot of the country. There's nice weather, the politics are friendly to their kind, and I also suggested to live on a hill, not in a valley, because there can be serious floods in Tennessee. Right before I went out there in 2015, there was a massive flood, and a lot of people I met there were crying and complaining, telling really sad stories about, their house flooding, grandma dying in the flood, and, all sorts of stuff. And surprisingly, they took my advice on both counts and made a huge life change based on my suggestions. Now they live on a hill in Tennessee. Never since I was a child had I felt pride like that, and it's because my parents seriously considered my advice. I felt incredibly proud that I was able to help them settle down, and they are reportedly very pleased with their new life in the South. I think why I value their taking my suggestions so much is because I thought they no longer respected my opinions. Over the years since my adulthood, I've tried many different tactics to convince my parents religion is not only false and should not be believed, but also that its teachings are harmful to believe and to practice in many ways. Regardless of my attempts, my mother often brushes off any criticism or factual info shared as only my opinions. Oh, that's just your opinion. Well, that's not true. I have verifiable sources. I have an entire laundry list of proofs against not only the Bible, but against God and faith. For these facts to be dismissed as only my opinion hurts. Not to brag, but I've spent nearly 10,000 hours in the last 12 years or so studying, reading, watching lectures and debates, writing about and making videos and podcasts, and discussing religion with anybody that will engage, making me somewhat of a master in the subject in my own regard. To approach my mother with this plethora of evidence, only to be dismissed as opinion, really makes me sad. I want more than most things in life to have a serious and equal loving relationship with my living parents. But there is a cloud of faith and mental conditioning that acts like a firewall against any arguments or information contrary to their worldview. I seriously have no idea how to reach them. I've tried everything. leading questions, those suck, calm and enraged debates, sending procured videos and quotes, even asking them to allow me to just lay out my case before arguing against it. No tactic has worked. With my parents firmly planted in Tennessee, they have even gone so far as to claim burial sites for them both. That is when it hit me. My parents are ready to die. But not only that, they're ready to die Christians that reject their son. Well, they claim to overly love me and respect me to the moon and back, calling me the disrespectful one for pushing my opinions on them. But they indoctrinated me for nearly 2 decades. My mother even said that I have 3 years left to convince her. I thought, like, maybe she knew she was dying, like she got another cancer diagnosis or something, and I need to, like, prepare for her dying. No. She thinks it's fair that since she only had 17 years to shove religion down my throat, that if I can't convince her of reality by 2026, then my 17 years of pushing back is over, and I must shut up till they die, more or less. Like that's somehow equal or fair. All this hurts bad. This is not some flighty opinion. This is a well-constructed, deeply considered worldview that simply rejects their premises. The MacGuffin in my life is the argument or bit of information that would change their minds. But I feel that may be as unreal as God. I've often asked believers what would change their minds. More often than not, with utter confidence, they claim nothing would change my mind. And I honestly, yet unfortunately, believe them 100%. Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. When asked in return, which is common, I want to arrogantly say nothing as well, because their worldview of the Bible and the church is often so contradictory to its own narrative that it does not even make a coherent worldview in any way. But my response is simply, evidence would change my mind. That's what would work. If you could prove to me that the Bible is accurate, that God exists and has supernatural abilities, perhaps you could convince me again, but that never comes. The Bible on page 1 immediately goes against what we know to be factual and true about the cosmos and evolution, starting with Genesis 1:2, where it says, "Let there be light," even though the light of the sun and the stars does not exist until day 4. Contradicts itself, saying man was created for the first time twice in Genesis. Let us create man in our image on 1:26, and then it was so. But after the 6-day creation, then there's the Garden of Eden, where he creates man for the first time again. These are separate accounts and not one and the same. There are differing details between them both. Both the creation myth and Noah's flood are known plagiarisms of previous holy myths from surrounding areas. This is known from 126 as well, with plural pronouns are used for "let us create man in our image and our likeness." The Trinity was not introduced until centuries after this was penned, so that could not be a reference to the Trinity, so that apologetic is out the window. And the plural pronouns themselves show a direct reference to the polytheistic Mesopotamian or Sumerian myths that Genesis was inspired by and plagiarized too. Anyway, all of this just barely scratching the tip of the iceberg by reading the first page or two of Genesis. But my mother sees it all only as opinion. For as out of date as her worldview is, her mental firewall against information is truly astonishing. She would rather lose communication with her son and possible future grandchildren than hear what I have to say and consider it earnestly. She claims her unconditional love for me, but one condition is that I either believe the way she does or not discuss it at all. She won't admit that she wants me to be a Christian, but the crying for months that I won't be in heaven is a pretty damning piece of evidence to the contrary. If she truly loved me, she would have the patience and compassion to understand why I'm so strong in my convictions and why I keep trying to convince them, no matter how futile. I argue with them because I love them, and I want to have a relationship with my mom and dad. And as much as they think I'm the one stopping that from happening, it's really them. I don't think it's okay to force belief or deconversion, but I feel like I have no other choice sometimes. They, on the other hand, see themselves as my elders and morally superior. They've had extra of my lifetimes to confirm their biases and delusions. They were each roughly 5 times my age by the time I started to question things and have my first doubts. So they have the wisdom of experience on their side, while I have the entirety of human knowledge thanks to the internet to trawl through in an attempt to form an accurate worldview. I care not for dogma or claims of divine. I care only about truth. I'm a seeker no matter where it leads. And I think my parents just have a faulty compass for truth, and they are too far beyond it to ever return. I just feel very small and hurt, like their imaginary sky daddy is more important to them than their flesh and blood son. And I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. I just share my thoughts, hoping others can relate. Do you also have a tenuous relationship with quote-unquote loving parents that won't accept you for one reason or another? Have you tried to convince them of your worldview only to be dismissed as opinion? Have you maybe broken through and actually got them to see your side of things? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching, and thank you for your support. This has been the Young Contrarian Podcast. Have a wonderful day.